What's going on out there, YouTube? This is SEL0320 representing JVS. So we've got what you guys have all been waiting for, one of the biggest animated movies of the year in a mega spoiler discussion with some of the best of the best in YouTubers, bloggers, and just general fans of this genre. What's going on, everybody?
Yo, what's up, guys?
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, I don't even know how many people are in the chat, to be quite honest with you guys. So, we're going to try to do our best to get through with this, but I will let you guys know as a disclaimer, there probably will be a part 2 to this. So, if any of you guys want to kind of check that out later, let us know in the comment section below. And right now, I'm about to send these guys a message so they can be able to know what's going on in the chat as well. All right, guys. So let's go and start it off.
And I'll share this on the Spidey Squad Twitter page, too.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's go ahead. That's a good segue. So, Evan, what's going on, bro?
What is up, guys? Evan Filarca from the Spidey Squad here, and I'm honored to be a part of this awesome spoiler discussion with all these talented, amazing YouTubers. And I saw Spider-Verse on Thursday, so on the 13th, not the 14th, and I'm just so happy that I'm been invited to talk about the movie with all these incredible people.
Dude, Spidey Squad for life. These guys are literally featured in the PS4 version of Spider-Man. So
it's true.
Shout out to Evan, and thank you for coming, man. Really appreciate you
being
here,
you.
Bro.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Who else want to go off? Anthony, what's going on, bro?
What's up, man? How you doing? Honored to be here. Just like him, I saw Spider-Verse on the 13th, on Thursday, and yeah, I'm really excited to start talking about this movie. That's it's exciting for sure.
Heck yes. I got another notable member of Team JVS from North Carolina. What's going on, Keaton?
What's going on, man? What's going on? Yep, this is Keaton 7 with JVS. I've been kicking it with SEL since we were 4 years old?
Yeah, at least.
Go back like chiropractors. So, but yeah, I saw the movie on Thursday, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming, bro. I appreciate you.
And what's going on?
Got CK61938 over there. The reason why I am a YouTuber at this point. What's going on, bro?
Yo, how's it going, everybody? So yeah, CK61938 here, calling in from the UK. I actually saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse last week because it was out a week early in the UK. I don't know why we're getting a lot of Marvel movies out before you guys. Can't be helped, I suppose. But I saw it twice. I saw it on the Thursday and the Friday, and was just absolutely blown away with it. And yeah, definitely a really good film. And if anybody who's watching this hasn't seen it yet, seriously, get your ass to the cinema and watch it. You will be blown away.
You got it, for real, man. Thanks for coming, bro. Nerd Chronic, what's going on, man? How's it going? Uh-oh. I don't know if it's audio.
I think we got a mute mic.
Audio's not working again.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. I thought we were working.
The danger zone.
Small technical difficulties, you guys. He will be back in just a second. We're just going to give him a little bit of time. It's all good, nerd. Hey, what's going on, David?
Hey, how are you?
Great, man. Thanks for coming here. Tell us a little about yourself.
Not a problem. Name's David Betancourt. I'm a comic book culture reporter at the Washington Post. I saw Spider-Verse a week ago, last Saturday.
Shoot, man. It was an honor for you to be here. I really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Right,
I got a chance to meet you at AwesomeCon. I don't know if you remember running into me.
I do remember you. I thought you were familiar.
Yeah. It was at the thing with Scott Snyder. It was for the...
Yeah, I end up moderating a lot of Scott's stuff usually. Yeah. Nice
I know you met a ton of people that day, but it was cool.
Okay, very cool.
Oh, yeah, I remember that panel. You did a great job with that one.
Thanks, man. AwesomeCon's a lot of fun. It's getting bigger, and I hope it continues to do so.
Alrighty, so I've sent all these guys individually the message because I can't send it to them right now on Skype for some reason. So you guys can join in on the chat. Everybody's just here right now. We're going to go through the questions, everybody. So here we go. Let's start it off.
Oh, damn, I don't exist.
Oh, that is cold.
Hi, guys.
Michael, I'm so sorry. What's going on,
I'm just playing, fam. I'm just playing. Hi there, my name is Michael, aka Fold34. I do TV show reaction videos and stuff like that. Journalist too. Enjoyed Spider-Verse quite a bit, and can't wait to talk about it with all of you.
Man, you know we honored to have you here, man. You know.
Just quickly, Sam, before we dive in, obviously I forgot to sort of plug myself, so for those who
the way we're
don't
going to
know,
do this, everybody, we're going to go through each question, and we have everybody opportunity to be able to kind of answer in their own interpretations, and then let's go ahead and make this go through smoothly, okay, everybody? All right,
let's
here we
see
go.
if front of his back.
Awesome.
All right, question number 1. What was your first feeling and expectations after watching just trailer number 1 of Into the Spider-Verse? What was your first feeling? We can start with you, Evan.
Well, for the very first time that they announced that they were going to make an animated movie of Spider-Man, I was so excited because that's never been done before for a character like Spider-Man, and bringing him into the form of animation was something I was always interested in. And seeing that initial trailer with Miles as the main character and the art style that they were going with was something that I was not expecting at all. And the fact that they made it a Spider-Verse movie, because back then we were just told it was going to be an animated Spider-Man movie, and then we found out it was for the Spider-Verse, so multiple Spider-Man was even more exciting, and drew me even more to want to see this because of what they could do with these characters and storytelling with all these different aspects of Spider-Man from the comics. And just seeing that initial scene with Miles doing the backflip off that building, and the beautiful art style of New York and how vibrant it was at night just blew me away. And sadly, though, when it said it was coming out on Christmas of next year, I was like, oh, that's going to be a while. But I was still looking forward to it a lot after seeing that amazing teaser trailer.
Nah, that's fair enough. So let's go ahead and go through this quickly. Anthony, what about you? When you first saw the first trailer, what did you think?
I loved it. I thought it was visually different from any of the animated movies we've kind of seen before, and I thought it was going to be a fresh take on what Spider-Man is, the Miles Morales story. And when I heard Phil and Lauren Miller were attached to it, I was kind of ecstatic as well because they were attached to Flash, and then that obviously didn't continue. But no, I was excited overall, and I love the trailer. And I was kind of hesitant though. I was kind of wanting live action Miles Morales, but animated it works so well. Especially we'll discuss more in the movie overall, but yeah, it works flawlessly though for sure.
Yeah, Michael, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, when I first saw the trailer for Into the Spider-Verse, first thing that caught me off guard was animation. I sort of didn't know how to feel about it, and then after a couple of rewatches, I was like, okay, I think they're really gonna hit this one out of the park with it, especially with the reverse shots of him falling through the sky. I thought those looked dope. But something I was kind of worried about, especially as a big Miles Morales fan of his original series, was it being a Spider-Verse film. I kind of was nervous that maybe they're gonna focus too heavy on the Spider-Verse and not give a Miles story, which wasn't the case, luckily. So those are my thoughts. I was excited, but a little nervous.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Keaton, what about you, man? When you first saw the first trailer?
I was super hyped. After I heard the title, I was scared that it was going to be one of those things where they were like, it's Into the Spider-Verse because at the very end of the movie, a portal opens and you don't know what's going to come through it. But I was timid at first just because I was like, oh wow, it's going to be animated, which means it'll be good, but it'll only be 57 minutes long, and I'll be annoyed by the end of it because I'm like, this was great. Why couldn't it have been an hour longer? But I was hyped from the get-go because the animation looked so interesting and different to me. So I was excited about it. I was just worried that I'm picky. So I was worried that it wasn't going to be long enough, or just, how animated movies are.
Yeah. It was definitely a lot of hype behind what it looked like from aesthetics, but at the same time, you really didn't know what we were going to get, especially from Sony at this point. So I feel you on that one, Keaton. CK, what about you, man? What were your thoughts when you saw the first trailer?
I mean, when I first saw the first trailer, I was just straight away I was hyped because it's a Spider-Man movie, and Spider-Man is the first character I actually read in comic books when I was younger. So I was really hyped for that. And then when because it was about Miles Morales, and I thought, okay, I mean, I've never read any of the Ultimate Spider-Man, I'll be honest, so I don't know much about Miles or anything about the character, but I've heard good things about him. I've heard a lot of people praise the character and how good he is and such, and, how he's essentially carried the mantle from Peter Parker. And I thought, you know what, it's a new take, it's a different Spider-Man, this is going to be good, I'm looking forward to it. So that was basically my take on it.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that one. Nerd Chronic, what about you, man? What was your first take when you saw the first trailer?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Actually, I think I'm using the internal microphone, so this is just decoration at this point. No problem though. That first trailer, it kind of did take me by surprise because I remember hearing the rumors about the film for a while. At the same time, I was hearing about the Donald Glover Deadpool show, and at the time, I thought when the Donald Glover show had been canned, I kind of lost hope for this one too. And the trailer just came out of nowhere for me. I was super surprised, and then very excited quickly after because I thought the animation for it, right from the get-go, looked really innovative and creative, and so I was pretty damn excited about it right to begin with. On top of all the other stuff that had been coming out at the same time, which was Homecoming and then the PS4 game being hyped up. So it was a big year for Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I felt the same kind of way with that. And then David, what about you? What did you think about the first trailer?
First time I saw the trailer, I have to be completely honest, I was angry and a little grumpy, and not because it didn't look fantastic, but as has been previously mentioned here, we're in this current era of live-action superhero movies that literally all of us probably grew up thinking we'd never see. I mean, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you had the Keaton Batman movie, and that was pretty much it. And a lot of us spent most of our teenage years, those young years, we were really in the comics thinking that these movies, that we were never going to get them. So this era right now of superhero culture dominating Hollywood is like literally a dream come true for everybody on here. So having said that, Miles Morales is a character I identify with very strongly because, like Miles, I'm half Puerto Rican, half African American. I care about him a lot. I've written on him a lot. I've written opinion pieces. I've reported on it. I was probably the first reporter to confirm that he was half Puerto Rican because the reports always said half black, half Latino. So I wanted to know what the Latino was. So I asked Brian Michael Bendis. I said, look, he's in New York. He's either Boricua or Dominican. Which one is he? And Bendis told me Puerto Rican. But I kind of let the fact that I've been spoiled by the last 10 years of dominance from Marvel Studios and DC trying to get it right, and Valiant's trying to get in there. It felt like a step down. It felt like they're not taking much of a chance, especially after they hinted at Miles' existence in Homecoming, because now we all know that Donald Glover is his uncle. But having said that, we're all here right now talking about this movie because it was absolutely spectacular. So kudos to them for getting past people like me who would be grumpy, who love Miles, and be grumpy about the fact that it's not live action because it doesn't matter because the film is just spectacular.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect segue, David, because the second question is provide one word describing how you would express your thought after leaving the Spider-Verse in the theaters, and you can expound on that, David.
Oh man, I was blown away. My first little thought, my mind was like going a mile a minute in English and Spanish, and I'm trying to put my thoughts together as to what I just seen. I definitely felt like I had seen something I've never seen before. On top of the fact that this is the first time in my life that I could ever personally 100% identify with the protagonist in a superhero movie, and that protagonist just happened to be Spider-Man. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But just unbelievable. You walk out of that theater and you not only realize you just watched something you've never seen before, but you realize you want to see it again.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was legit walked away and I was like, what did I just watch? Like, how did they, do such a great job on every level, whether it be the aesthetic, design, the music, like everything.
The shoes.
Worked.
Has anyone gotten the Jordans yet?
But let's not talk about it. I took a nap last night.
I was
The
asking
Miles
last
once.
night. Shoot, man. If any of you guys got it, kudos to you guys because I heard it sold out quick. But I definitely wanted them.
Yeah.
I wanted them after that movie. But,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ben just tweeted everybody saying he doesn't have the hookup.
let's see. Let's go through the lines. CK, what was your first thought and your first word that would kind of make you? How did you feel coming out of the movie?
I would probably say exhilarated, in the sense that it's a complete different. It's a break from the norm, basically. We've had the Raimi Spider-Man films, we've had the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, now we've got Tom Holland playing Spider-Man, but this was just a breath of fresh air, essentially in that sense, in that we weren't sticking with the same character over and over and over again. You know, this time we brought in a new character. We brought in a character that a lot of people are familiar with, as David has just said, you know, because he's half American, half Puerto Rican, well, half New York, half Puerto Rican. You know, it felt good to have somebody representing, you know, the ethnic minority in that sense, because, you know, it's a story of not just him becoming a superhero, but also being in that environment, living in a world where, you know, ethnic people are being ridiculed for whatever shape or form, you know, in this day and age. So to have a character that for once isn't, you know, and don't take this as anything wrong, but, you know, isn't a male white character, you know, the fact that we also had Gwen Stacy in there as well, and Spider-Ham. just having all of those different diverse characters was just, it was a breath of fresh air. So yeah, that was what I thought coming out from the film.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally well said.
Yeah. Evan, what about you, man? What was your first thought and first word that you can kind of describe coming out of Spider-Verse?
I was just, like, astounded by what I just witnessed. Like, having Miles be such a big, impactful character in the forefront of this movie was such a cool thing for so many people out there who really love that character. But having him be done in a different way that's from the comics or even Spider-Man PS4 really made him his own. Like, he's different from Peter, he's different from Gwen, he's different from Spider-Ham, he's different from everybody. And you really get the sense of who he's becoming as a person and who he is turning into with his version of Spider-Man, like with his own unique, you know, attitude and personality being incorporated into the Spider-Man persona. I think it's such a cool way to think about like what the tagline of the movie is. Anyone can be Spider-Man. You could be Spider-Man. And after seeing the movie and going out of the theater thinking that and having that thought in mind just made me love it even more, and such a great message to send to people who really love this character. And I think they did a great job conveying it to everyone in the theater.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Michael, what was your first thought?
Oh, I gotta say, I think treat is the word that comes to mind. No, and I say that seriously because I think within the first 20 minutes, I got so glued to the screen, and I think a tear dropped like within the first 20 minutes or so, because it was like, one, in terms of like the representation, seeing a character like Miles, especially who I remember reading that comic when I was like 13 or 14 when it came out, and I identified it with it then. So just to see that on screen, and especially executed so well and be just unapologetically, you know, what it wanted to do, was just amazing to me. And on top of that, what I loved too was seeing the Ultimate Universe displayed for the first time in mainstream media on screen. You know, we're not seeing Spider-Man when he's 15, 16, 17. We're seeing him when he's 29 in his prime, which was brilliant, by the way. They need to do a movie with adult Spider-Man if they ever want to do that again, like a spin-off, because I thought it was so awesome to see that. And then seeing an older, seasoned, out of the norm situation with all these characters, seeing a gender-bended version of Doc Ock was awesome to me. And so, I think treat to me encompasses all those words. So this movie was a treat.
No, I think that was great. That was great. Treat. Interesting. Keaton, what about you, man? What was your one word? What did you feel coming out of this movie?
I think the word that I would say coming out of it was satisfied. I think I was definitely satisfied because, like, these days I go into like so many comic book movies, and I'm like, expect the worst, hope for the best. But like that one, I was happy the whole way through. Like while I was watching, I'm like, I hope they do this. Oh, they just did it. Oh man, well, maybe they'll do. Yep, there it is right there. Like it was so satisfying because like I feel like there've been so many movies now that have just fallen into like the standard insert template copy paste style that I was just happy to see something so different and visually breathtaking. Like I was so satisfied. Like, and I don't want it to be like satisfied in the sense like, oh, it's all right. Like, no, I was actually like satisfied, like happy. Like, I'd give it a really good Yelp review. Like, I was. Yeah.
Nah, that's good. Nerd Chronic, what about you, man?
One word, I would probably use anxious once I got out because I saw this about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, at a screening for it before it came out. And so at that time, I had only seen it with my friend, my roommate, because we got invited to go see it. And when we got out, that was way before most people had seen it. I know you had seen it, Sam. We had mentioned it a tiny bit. So I was like really anxious to see what the world was going to think about this thing. Because I was blown away by it, honestly, and I was kind of hoping that everyone was going to see how special it was. I think it's truly groundbreaking. I think it's incredibly innovative for film and for animation as a medium and for the superhero film genre. And I think once I got out, I was kind of just hoping that this would really shake the world. I do think it's going to have a hard time with that because this is a really packed month. But I'm still hoping that it lands as strongly as I was hoping to begin with.
No, I think you articulated that perfectly.
That's awesome.
I completely agree, man. Last but not least, Anthony, what was your one word and thought on this?
Probably my one word, surprised. When I came out of the theater, I was just really surprised about the execution of, the emotion, the action scenes, the characters. No one's one dimensional in this movie at all, which something that I kind of, if you seen the MCU, some of the villains are kind of one note. They don't really have any motivations, and surprisingly, everyone has their own kind of perspective and point of view in this movie that I really appreciated. And when I left the theater, I was just so surprised that it was this good of a movie. That a lot of thought, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of care, especially, with the passing of, the great Stan Lee. It was just, taken care of. It felt like it was in great hands by Sony and Marvel. So, yeah, I was, surprised. That's kind of, my emotion when I came out of the theater. But in a good way,
Nah, I think that's great. Man, I gotta actually tell my one word. I didn't prepare myself. I'm sorry. Man, I'm sitting there, getting you guys facilitated. But,
no answer key.
I would say groundbreaking. Groundbreaking would be my terminology for this because I am a very big Spider-Man fan. Batman is my first and favorite superhero, but my second has always been Spider-Man. Heck, I got the Spider-Man Pro, sitting right here with all red decked out and got all the older animated features. I even got the one that was on MTV. So I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man. But I was I'm wanting Miles Morales to kind of have that breakout, and I think when I read Jason Reynolds' novel, I was like, man, this has to be, people have to know who this kid is. And I was just so impressed by everything about it, from the visual immersion of it being literally like a comic book brought to life, from the artistry of how they design every single character differently, but to their mediums, how they are in the comics. The music, everything about it just really blew me away. And it's honestly, Satisfied would be the second thing I would say, because at this point, I haven't seen Aquaman, haven't seen Bumblebee, haven't seen Mary Poppins, but if I don't see them until next year, I finished the year great with Miles Morales. I am great. You know what I'm saying? I was very satisfied ending this year with Miles Morales. If I looked at it again 3 more times, I would still feel the same exact way, that it's ton of Easter eggs, but ton of fun, but groundbreaking. So I think that would be my thought on it. But yeah, let's go to question number 3. what is your favorite moment that spoke to you in the Spider-Verse? I guess I'll start this off, but I'm not going to expound on the Easter eggs and hidden gem part of it. My favorite moment is when Miles Morales is tied to a chair, and he's having a conversation with his dad. He can't really say anything, but his dad is really just kind of pouring out to him. He wanted to kind of articulate to his son, one, that your uncle's dead, two, that he is loved, and he said something specific, like, you have such a light in you that nobody will be able to stop you once you get it. And, like, when he said that, I was like, yo, I'm starting to tear up a little bit. And then, all of a sudden, Miles got that spark, and that broke him free. But then, Miles got to the top of the building, got his J's on, had his hoodie on. He took that leap of faith. From the cinematic side of things, and just from the way they did that scene, that was my favorite scene of the movie. I wish I could play it right now, or YouTube would probably take it down, so I'm not going to do that. But that moment, I was like, this is great. I fell in love with the movie after that point. So that's my one moment. But let's go through the line. David, what was your favorite moment in this film? And then also, if you have any notable hidden gems or Easter eggs that you saw that were really significant, you can also bring that up as well.
Oh man, I think the biggest thing about this movie is it's so hard to pinpoint one thing because there are so many great things. Yes. But if I had to say what came to mind, the first thing is that opening scene where he's late for school with his parents. Just someone from that same biracial background, seeing that one African American parent, one Puerto Rican parent, speaking in English, speaking in Spanish, going back and forth. That was pretty emotional for me to see and handled beautifully. A lot of people don't know that Phil Lord was half Cuban and kind of grew up in a similar situation. And I think he really went out of his way to make sure that there wasn't something that was ignored, because there's only so much time that, the headline clickbaity thing about Miles is that he's the biracial Spider-Man, right? He's black, he's Latino. But there's only so much time you can spend focusing on that because people are going there for the superhero stuff. That's why I never gave Bendis such a hard time, because Miles wasn't quote-unquote authentically Puerto Rican in the comic book, because you're reading a comic because you want to see the superhero stuff. So that scene with his parents, the scene where he gets the suit from Aunt May, and Aunt May was a beast in this movie. I loved her. She was great. I mean, when Miles arrives and she's like, what took you so long? And he's, going for a swing for the first time to that great song, What Up Danger, on the soundtrack. That just was, that was just, they tweeted that out on iTunes trailers, that little sneak peek, and I must have watched it a zillion times. And the last thing is, this is a spoiler conversation, but the Spidey 2099 at the end, and then come on, man. And Oscar Isaac is the voice. Are you kidding me? I mean, they nailed that. So, and just Spidey 99 pointing at the cartoon Spider-Man, and they're just going back and forth, back and forth. I mean, you've already seen this fantastic, spectacular movie that you weren't expecting to be this great, and then they punch you in the gut, and you're laughing hysterically watching that. So those are the things that stand out to me.
That's awesome.
I think that's great, man. The soundtrack, we're going to get into that conversation a little later on, but the soundtrack is amazing. I thought Black Panther was going to have the best soundtrack, but I think Spider-Man might have beat it, man, for real. But yeah, Evan, what about you, bro? What was your favorite quintessential moment in this film?
It's so hard to pick, because the coolest thing about it is that every scene, if you pause it, it looks like a comic book frame. Like, it looks like if you pause whichever scene you're watching, you're reading a comic. And that's the coolest part, specifically when they added the frames of Miles diving when he backflips off the building, and then you see him getting closer and closer and closer, and then he's right in your face. Besides that, I think the scene where he first buys the costume Spider-Man suit from the Stan Lee store, and then he's trying to jump off the building, and he goes back down. He's like, okay, there's a smaller building, because it's just so innocent from him. Because when he witnessed the Ultimate Peter's death, and then he wants to try and be Spider-Man, even after that whole MJ speech, and he's trying to train himself, and he just kind of falls off the building and ends up breaking the goober. It just shows that he's trying his hardest to try and live up to Peter's expectations and try and be the hero that he knows he can be, and the hero that Peter was, and try and continue his legacy. And that small scene is just a cool tease of what's to come in the rest of the movie, how you see Miles even grow more with the alternate Peter from the other dimension, and then just that first scene alone, though, was not only hilarious, but also just like a cool little insight to what we can expect in the future.
No, I completely agree. That's perfect. That's perfect. Anthony, what about you, man? What's your favorite moment?
My favorite moment, man, it has to be the and this is a spoiler, but if you're a Miles Morales, if you're a Miles Morales fan, you should have kind of seen this coming. The death of Spider-Man, the montage that they had there, when everyone's like realization, looking at their phones, feeling that their idol, their superhero of New York City is passed away, and you kind of like it's so beautifully executed because you realize that it's like the world, like. All these problems are on Miles' shoulders at that point. The moment that and that song that plays, and I cried at the theater, and it's so sad because I'm a Spider-Man fan since the first movie I ever saw in theaters, and when I was like 5 years old, bro. And the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, it like touched me really hard. And then my favorite Stanley cameo of all time when he says, "I'm gonna miss him." When he says that, it made me really. Like it was such a meta kind of moment for me because it was kind of wow, first that's my favorite character by him, and also just the execution of it is just beautiful, and also any scene that had Spider-Man Noir in the movie was beautiful. That's my favorite. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that if I don't dress up as Spider-Man Noir at Comic-Con next year, then I'm a failure in life because that was lit, bro. I love it.
Yeah, and I think that song was I'm not scared. That's actually a really good song.
I'm not scared of the.
Yeah, I think X is actually featured on it. Anyway, Keaton, what about you, man? What was your favorite moment in this film?
It was definitely one of the feels heavy moments, but it resonated with me a lot. It was right after spoiler alert, obviously, but it was right after Miles lost his uncle Aaron, and he's dealing with it, and I've dealt with loss before. I'm sure all of us have at some point, and you always have this sense that no one understands how you feel, and he's literally surrounded by people just like him from other universes that have had the same style of loss, and all of them were like, we know exactly how you feel, and yeah. That's how it is, and that's how it kind of is in real life. You feel so alone when you're dealing with loss, but there are people out there that know exactly how you feel and are going through the same thing that you're going through, and that part really, really resonated with me heavy because I thought it was such a good scene because it was all of these powerful heroes that are all completely vulnerable for the exact same reason.
Yeah. And this other thing I didn't even think about is the fact that, one of the biggest things for Peter is that he lost his uncle, but Miles lost his uncle too. And I didn't even think about it. It's such an interesting thing, but it's really big because of who and what his uncle meant to him. CK, what was your favorite moment in this one?
I mean, just like everybody else, there are so many to pick, but I have to go with pretty much at the very end where once the multiverse has been closed, the portal, how Miles stands in front of his dad as Spider-Man, but then when he gives him that hug, it's I really want to say something, but I know I shouldn't. Yeah. And it's just almost as a kid, you would do something that you think to yourself, okay, this is awesome, but what would happen if I told my parents? How would they react? What would they actually say? Would they stop me from doing what I like doing? And that's kind of how it felt for Miles, which is why he had to put on that deep voice. So when he put on that deep voice, it took me back to Civil War, where you had Spider-Man interrogating Donald Glover's, Miles' uncle, basically, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, there's similarities going on here. But then when he says, I love you, and then he walks off, and then his dad's like, wait, what?
Wait, what?
And I'm thinking, you nearly slipped there, Miles, you nearly slipped there. But that moment there, just that, those sort of few minutes, it's like Miles is just trying to reach out to his dad in that sense, but knows that he knows that from what he's seen with Spider-Man previously, and then all the other Spider characters that were in there, how it's probably not a good idea to tell someone close to you who you are. Maybe not now, maybe in a few years' time, who knows, if we do get a sequel or any spin-offs, and if we see Miles again years later, and if he does tell his dad, hopefully his dad, has it in him to trust him. And I think that's what that hug was signifying, to say, look, please just trust me. Just understand why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing it. So yeah, that was quite a scene for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Man, David, what was your favorite moment, man?
We're going back to me?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, not David. I'm sorry. Anthony. Not Anthony. Nerd Chronic. All
the way around. Yeah.
You're good, bro.
It's all good. Man, there's so many to choose from, like everyone said. I think one that really set the tone for me, though, that I really loved, was the opening credits, which then concluded with the Comics Code Authority approval stamp on it, which was that got a big cheer with my audience that was in the theater, was because it was like, it's almost like a big middle finger to the Comics Code Authority, which was kind of a pain in the ass back in the day for comics when it was around. And if you've ever heard Stan Lee tell the story of when that eventually got disbanded, it was like in part thanks to Spider-Man, because Stan Lee wrote a Spider-Man drug awareness story, which they told him he's not allowed to do, because you weren't allowed to mention drugs in any capacity back then. And he said, we're going to do it anyways because it's a good story, and Spider-Man helping a kid who was on drugs. So we're just going to do it anyways. And they did it, and no one freaked out. And the Comics Code Authority very soon after ceased to exist, because they realized, how can we have this? Like, what's the point? It's not helping anyone. We're hindering these heroes from saying important things. So it was really like a great button for me to see that, like, start the film that way, to like kind of emphasize the influence that Spider-Man has had as a character and as a cultural icon.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I didn't even think about that one. Michael, I think you're next or last.
I think
yeah.
I think the last one. Yeah, there were too many scenes to pick from that I really did enjoy. One in particular that comes to mind was just a lot of the sequences between Miles and his uncle. Especially when they're doing like the spray painting and stuff. I really like those, just to see his character just sort of bond with his uncle. I knew what was going to happen to him, but it was great to see him just in his regular day settings with his family, like you're mentioning, David, I believe. Just those moments, I really enjoyed seeing that. And I'd probably say the Stanley cameo was really great as well.
I think that's good. Got somebody that's about to leave really soon, so I'm going to give him opportunity to tag along question number 4, and then his kind of closing thoughts of the whole entire film. Keaton, I know you're about to leave really soon because you got company over, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of give your thoughts to this question, and then what did you think as a whole about this film, okay? The question is, what does Spider-Man as a character mean to you? And how does Spider-Man's Into the Spider-Verse translate that feeling in you? So what did Spider-Man mean to you in general, and then what did this movie translate that as a whole for you?
Spider-Man's always meant quite a bit to me, just because like the whole aspect of not having the standard mom and dad raised you in the best way background. Like I'm come from a home with single mom raised me. Dad died when I was really young, and so like it's always been one of those things that's like, hey, anybody can be a hero. It's not where you come from, it's who you can become. So Spider-Man's always meant a whole lot to me. Like I've always really enjoyed the aspect of him. Like you, SEL, I've always been like a huge DC fan, but like Spidey's always been like one of my prime guys outside of DC. And so like just the whole idea behind Spider-Man is, and then of course Miles Morales, like just being a minority in the day and age that we're living in now, like it's really, really powerful. And I just think it's really good. I think it's really good in the age that we live in.
Yeah, no. And then I guess I'm going to let you go ahead and kind of answer any of the rest of this. So, if you have any thoughts on the cast, the story, VFX, music, and then your positives and negatives, real quick.
Gotcha. Yeah, the cast was phenomenal. Like, when I first saw the voice cast, and I was just like, wait a minute. Cottonmouth and Paperboy are in this? I'm in. You got me. You got me hooked. I'm done. I gotta get it now. Like, I went and bought my ticket that day. Like, as soon as I heard it, I'm like, Paperboy. Like, I was hyped. I was all about it. And so, like, yeah, like that, the voice cast was phenomenal. Was absolutely phenomenal. Like, I loved all of the voice. The whole time me and my wife were watching the movie, we were like, whose voice is that? Whose voice is that? Like, I didn't even know Chris Pine was in it. Like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't even realize it. I didn't even realize Chris Pine. And so, like, it was, the voice cast was amazing. The visuals were amazing. And, like, more or less, I have very little to complain about with the movie. The only complaint that I had, so I don't know how many of you saw it in 2D. I saw it in 2D, and I don't know what happened with the conversion process, but there were moments in the 2D version that they didn't change it over right to 2D, so you could still see like the double frames from 3D. And once I noticed it the first time, I kept noticing it throughout the movie. It didn't mess the movie up for me, but I kept noticing it. Like, whenever they would show like an over-the-shoulder shot, or two people would be having a conversation and it would show it, the double frames were still in there. And so I don't know if it was like a hurry-up thing, but like the conversion process between 3D and 2D, like if you looked at the character's hair, you would always see double frames instead of one. And so, like, whenever they converted it between 3D and 2D, there were some issues there, but it was minimal. It wasn't something that messed the entire movie up from me. That was honestly my only con. My pros, though, the soundtrack was absolutely phenomenal. Like, I went home and got the soundtrack right after I saw the movie. Because honestly, I'd been waiting for the Vince Staples song that was in the trailer. I'd been waiting for that one forever. I'd been looking for it, and people have been posting like,
we're losing him. We're losing him.
Dubstep.
We're losing him. Dubstep TV. We're losing him. I think all these guests are probably cutting his internet connection off.
Oh
no. You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb that he's gonna give this a 5 out of 5. Oh, Keith, you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah,
wait,
okay.
where did I leave off?
Honestly, I can't remember.
You were talking about the song.
Staples.
Yeah,
the Vince Staples song. Like, honestly, I've been waiting for it for like ever since I saw the trailer. I'd been hyped to hear it, and I was excited for it. And so I was really excited when I finally was able to come home and hear it fully right after I saw the movie. And so, yeah, I love the soundtrack. I love the cast. Like, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, and rating 1 out of 5. What do you give it?
You know, honestly, I'd give it a 5. I get a little bit nitpicky over things, but at the same time, I don't. And so, like, if a movie is really good and like not obviously bad, like, it'll get my seal of approval. So I give it a 5. I'm not going to bring decimals into it. So, yeah, I give it a 5. I give it a 5. I love it.
Nah, I appreciate you, Keith. Thanks for showing up for this, man. You definitely are an asset to the team. Where can everybody find you at on, I think, Twitter and anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Keeden7. So that's KEEDEN and then the number 7. And then, yeah, just hit me up with any questions you guys have. Hit me up with any thoughts you have. I love talking to people. I love social media. So, like, if any of you want to follow me, If any of you want me to follow you, just hit me up, let me know, and I'd love to hear from you. Honored to be here. Very, very happy to chat with you guys. I'm honored. When he first opened the chat and he said it was the best of the best, I was like, what, word? Like, I'm in here? Like, it's like that now? Like,
honors, Keaton.
I'm very, very honored to be here and hanging out with you guys, and thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. You take care, man.
All right, take care, Keaton.
Awesome. Guys, take care. Take it easy.
All right.
All right. So.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask something real quick because
go ahead.
Danielle and Zaldi in the chat said about the double frames, if they weren't a part of the style or not. Because that's what I thought. I think that was a creative decision to have those double frames used in the film as they were.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think they used it in place of like depth of field, a traditional depth of field.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think what they were trying to do is that you could see that when it was focused on Miles, or say if it was focused on Gwen Stacy, they were fine. But anything on the outside, it was kind of like a folded up image of a 3D orientation, and at the same time looking like an old school comic and how it actually looked bubbled. And I definitely think that was the design aesthetic that they wanted. There was a person that did a critical review and kind of like smashed the movie because of it. And I was like, don't you see, this is what they intentionally were trying to do. I do think I would like to see it in 3D. I'm not sure if they did take advantage of 3D. I'm not sure. But I think that they designed it intentionally for that, because it only happened when there was a catastrophic event happen, or when his, spider sense was going off, or like something that was impactful happening. From a depth perception standpoint, I think that was definitely an intentional thing. That's a great comment on that, Nerd on it. So we go ahead and we need to hurry up. So I'm gonna try to ask two questions at the same time, so we can kind of fast track this a little bit. Evan, I'm gonna ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're the best person to answer this question, I think. What does Spider-Man as a character mean to you, and how did this movie translate that feeling to you? And then the second part of this is, what did you think of the cast?
Wow. Well, let me answer the second one first, because I think the cast is outstanding. Shameik Moore is Miles from now on to me.
Totally. Absolutely.
In comparison, we had Najee Jeter, who voiced Miles from Spider-Man PS4. And I guess even cooler, Donald Glover voiced Miles at one point in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, which was awesome. This, though, Shameik perfectly encapsulates Miles. He is Miles to me. I think he perfectly conveys who the character is and defining him as his own, individual person, and differentiating him from Peter Parker is the most important thing that I think that they could have done for this movie. And same thing with Jake Johnson. I think he did a really good job as an older Peter Parker, kind of like more worn down, more veteranized, more experienced, and kind of a little bit more exhausted after all the stuff he's done as Spider-Man and his relationship with Mary Jane and everything. Haley Steinfeld was pretty good as Gwen. I thought she was fine. And I wish, though, we got more Nick Cage as Spider-Man Noir, because that was easily my favorite one in the whole movie.
Yeah.
So good as Spider-Man Noir. And mainly, the first question, what Spider-Man means to me and how I think he was in this film, is a lot of things, and a lot of different things for a lot of people in the Spidey Squad community mainly, that he is us. He's the average Joe. He's the everyman. Peter Parker is just a simple, normal guy with real-life problems, and who just so happens to have these superpowers and tries to be the best hero that he can possibly be to take care of the ones he loves. And I think that's such a meaningful message to convey to people with a character like Spider-Man that means so many things to so many different people. And for me, I think the whole phrasing, with great power there must also come great responsibility, has so many other meanings too. It means that you can stand up for what you believe in, and you have the great power to try and help others that you can help with your own special traits. Like whatever you do and who you are, you can help others with your own personal, identity. And just conveying that as a way on how you could also be a superhero is such a great thing. And how they did in this movie too, with making Miles the main character rather than Peter from this new, younger perspective, was such a great idea. And having him interact with an older Spider-Man and a younger, more, rejuvenized, youthful Spider-Man meshing that together, I think was a highlight of the movie and really conveyed that meaning more to people who love Spider-Man from the older generations to the more, younger generations who may not know a lot about Spider-Man. And I think that this movie is just a love letter to everything relating to what the character is and what he stands for.
Perfectly executed. That's the reason why I wanted you up here, man. David and Michael are going to have to leave. David, I'm going to try to shoot a couple questions your way really quick so I can respect your time. I know you got to leave at like 5:30. I guess the first question, of course, was what does Spider-Man mean to you as a character? But then if you want to kind of break down what you thought about the story, and then also if you had any speculations on spin-offs and future films and what do you want for this progressionally, where do you want this to go as far as what Sony is possibly going to do? But I guess the first question again is what does Spider-Man mean to you and what did this movie mean to you in translation to that?
Well, I mean, Spider-Man, you can't love Marvel and not love Spider-Man. I think for so many people, their introduction to superhero culture within comics comes from either Marvel or DC. I don't think it's as tribal as it was back in the day. I think there are people that love Marvel and DC, not just, only Marvel and DC. But when you love Marvel, you can't help but fall for Spider-Man. He's such a fun character. Not one, but two of the coolest costumes ever in comics with the red and blue and the black. And then that's not even counting Miles' suit, which is awesome. It's a character that they wisely figured out can be spread out a little bit. I mean, what they've done with the Spider-Verse is realize that it's a mantle that can be passed down to other people, and they've created some really cool characters, a lot of them in this movie. In terms of spin-off, I think now that they have established this universe that it'll hopefully be successful, what I would like to see is maybe each of these Spider folks get their own movie.
Yeah.
Now that you've got them all together and established that the Spider-Verse is here, maybe Miles' sequel will be just all Miles. Although they did do a good job making sure Miles got, a good chunk of the movie because that's what they advertised. But I think a Spider-Gwen movie would work. Who wouldn't want to see a Spider-Norman? And I think the possibilities are really endless, but I think there'll definitely be a sequel, but I think they'll have to decide if they want to keep bunching everyone together in one movie, or, this is a huge win for Sony. This is something that they don't need Marvel Studios to hold their hand with. So, not only that, but also the Venom movie, which continues to make money.
Yeah.
So they're kind of a role now where they can kind of say, hey, they took a huge chance with this, so they can take a whole lot more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And did you have any positive or any negatives or anything you want to comment on the VFX or music or anything that kind of stood out negatively or positively for you? No,
I thought everything was great. I mean, I can't emphasize it enough how not excited I was for this movie because it was animated, just because Miles is a character that means a lot to me, and I kind of had ignorantly convinced myself that live action is like the peak of superhero cinematic entertainment. And this movie, along with Incredibles 2, has proven that that's not the case. I think it's a big win. I don't think we realized just how many superhero movies there were this year in 2018. It seems like Black Panther was 2 years ago. That was February.
Totally.
So many movies, superhero movies that have come out, and I think this Spider-Verse might be the best one. And if you would have told me that an animated movie would be the best one in the year where Black Panther and Infinity War came out, I would have told you were crazy, but that might be the case here.
No, that is so real. 1 out of 5, what did you give it?
5 stars for sure.
Well, David, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you or your writing?
You can find me on Twitter at @ADCFanboy. That's DC for District of Columbia, not a DC Comics, although I do love DC Comics as well. And you can read my work in the Washington Post. If you Google David Betancourt Washington Post, my author page will come up. You can see everything I write. I've been covering comic book culture for years. Everything from the movie, basically everything that's spawned from comic books, including the comics as well. We don't forget that. So check it out if you can.
All right. Thank you so much, brother. Take care, man.
Thank you, guys. Awesome chat.
Cheers. See ya.
Later.
Take care, Dave.
And then let's see, Michael, what's going on, bro? You are about to leave, so I want to make sure I respect your time as well. So we're going to go through question 4 for you, and then we're going to
Sure.
kind of break off from that. If you can kind of expound on what you thought of the cast, what you thought on the story, VFX and music, and then kind of end it out with like your star rating. But the first question, like I said, is what does Spider-Man mean to you, and how did this movie translate that?
Yeah, Spider-Man is a character. Peter Parker means quite a bit to me. For many reasons, he's funny, he's charming, but he's also got a lot of tragedy in his life, and it's a lot of everyday tragedy, having to maintain the superhero identity with his life, and that's something I really identified with growing up, and specifically Miles Morales means a whole lot to me because when I first started reading comics more seriously, he was the character, one of the first ones that I kind of started reading. And of course, being Ethiopian Canadian, I really, could resonate with a character like this who looks like me, who acts just like I would at the time I was reading the comic. It really spoke to me, and I think this film did everything it needed to be in terms of a comic books reader, original series, original fan of Miles' series, and for newer audiences. I thought it was so well adapted. Throwing in the Spider-Verse as his origin, they hit all the main points that they needed to with his Uncle Aaron, with his father, and putting those slots mostly where they're supposed to be compared to the origin. I thought that was great, and just speaking on the movie as a whole, it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I thought the cast was great. No complaints there. The music was great. I thought maybe at 1 or 2 points, since they're for the most part they're like pretty like a lot of like hip hop rap songs, they might come out a little awkward in some instances, especially if you just like Miles is really sad, then all of you hear like a boom, bah, or something like that. That wasn't the case here. And for the most part, I loved this movie. I think I had a few nitpicks. It might have been around towards the third act. I thought the visuals got a little bit too much for me.
I agree.
And I thought I wanted a little bit more depth from some of the Spider-Verse characters, but again, it was a long movie already, and they packed in a lot really well. So I don't knock them too much for that. But those are pretty much my overall thoughts. I thought Miles was great.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Michael. What was your closing thought and rating for this? 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
I'm typically not a person to give a movie like a 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5, but I'm gonna go and give Spider-Verse a 5 out of 5 for the sake. I thought they did a really good job. I think Sony's got some weight now in the superhero game.
They definitely got their weight up. They've been flexing for real. But thank you, Michael. Where can everybody find you at? Everywhere. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and plug that.
yeah, no worries. If you guys just search up Farewell34 on YouTube, Twitter, you should be able to find me, and Instagram as well. Do a lot of TV show reaction videos and stuff like that, so if you're interested in checking that out, follow your boy.
Yeah, you guys, thank you so much for being here, bro.
No, thank you so much for having me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the film, and leave your comments. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
All right,
bye.
to bring you in
Take
for
care.
Aquaman later, man.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to see that movie soon. You guys.
Alright, CK, I know you are literally at, what is it, like 12 o'clock your time right now?
Yeah, well, it's 10:30, so and the fiance's just come in, just asking if I'm still busy. So I may have to go in the next 5 minutes or so. So
Yeah,
it's 10:30 at night. She's not feeling well at the moment, so she needs looking after.
I'm trying to accommodate you guys and fast track as best I can. So you're next on this one. So same exact thing, just like Michael. If you can just let us know what does Spider-Man mean to you? How does this movie translate to it? And then if you kind of expound on the cast, the story, and then what is your speculations for what they're going to do next? Because I feel like they've opened up such a realm of possibility now. It's like, let each one of them have their own movie, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Okay, I mean, well, first of all, what does the character mean to me? I mean, like I said at the beginning, he was the first comic book character that I read in terms of comic books, and at the time, I thought to myself, "Oh, this is interesting," Spider-Man. I'd already kind of had an idea as to who he was at the time, and like everybody else has said, he is just an average Joe, just an everyday guy, goes to school, then goes to college and all that sort of stuff. He's just he's in a sense he's almost like Superman. He's not an alien. No, what I mean is that Peter Parker, he's an ordinary guy. He's a photographer for the Daily Bugle, but at the same time he's Spider-Man. But you wouldn't see that because obviously we don't see his face because he's always covering it with a mask. So seeing that on screen, especially this version, this Miles Morales, who, like I said, I mean, I think I first heard about him probably about a decade ago. And I remember when people were so excited about this new version of Spider-Man, that he was an ethnic minority character, you know, he was half American, half Latino and such. And it felt like, it kind of like how I felt with Black Panther, that finally there's a film that you know, is telling our story. It represents us in that sense, and that's kind of what I thought. You know, watching this film, it was like watching a black guy being Spider-Man. Hell yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Moving on to the cast. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Going into this film, I had no idea who the cast was. I didn't know who anybody was that was voicing any of the characters, apart from Nicolas Cage. And when I heard that Nicolas Cage was voicing Spider-Noir, I thought, is he going to ruin him? Is he gonna do anything bad? But then, when I watched Teen Titans go to the movies earlier this year, and obviously Nicolas Cage voices Superman, I thought, no, why are they doing this? But then he sounded great, and then obviously, and then with Spider-Noir, I was on the skeptic side, but where I thought, you know what, he's actually done a pretty good job. I mean, the bit where we all meet the new characters in Peter Parker's lair with Aunt May, and there he is at the top with his coat just bellowing in the wind, and you know, Miles is like, is his coat actually blowing? Where's the wind? And it's like, there I go, the wind goes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's typical Nicolas Cage. He can stay. It's fine. But yeah, and I didn't even know that Mahershala Ali was one of the was one of the voice actors. Obviously, he plays Uncle Aaron, and I thought he did a good job. But his character for me was probably his was more of a complicated nature, because he loves his nephew so much, but at the same time he's working for Wilson Fisk, and you think, how do you even, you know, what goes through your mind when you're doing something like that, when you're working for someone like Wilson? But then when he realizes that Miles is actually Spider-Man, it's suddenly all of that just goes out the window, and he realizes, hang on, I can't do this to this kid, because he not only means the world to him, but clearly Miles looks up to Aaron, and he knows that, which is why he just didn't want to harm him any further. Liev Schreiber as Wilson Fisk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At times you just couldn't tell it was actually him, because obviously he had to put on the proper sort of Italian New York voice for Wilson, and I just thought, okay, I couldn't really guess it until I saw the credits roll, and I realized, oh, Liev Schreiber, he was clearly playing Wilson Fisk, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's a good dynamic to give Wilson. The other thing I want to say about Wilson, why was he so big?
Exactly.
And his head is like that when he's like,
it's like his head was on his chest at some point.
He's just like a big box.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It was just this big box walking around. I thought, I mean, I know he's made of muscle, but come on, you know, even the Spider-Man animated TV series didn't have him that big either. But hey, you know, it's part of the animation, and it did the job. In terms of the storyline, fantastic, really well written. You know, the multiverse is brilliant, and I'm really excited for whatever comes out of it. You know, the Spider-Verse itself as a whole. Spin-offs, yes, definitely. Gwen Stacy, definitely got to be the best character of the film, I think. She was the standout character for me. I didn't even realize this till after I watched the film, but I was looking at the movie poster, realizing that Gwen Stacy's actually wearing ballet shoes. I was like, okay, that's good. I can work with that. I can work with the ballet shoes. No complaints there. I would love to see other spin-offs. Truth be told, I didn't actually stay to the very, very, very end of the credits. No. But I've just literally, in the last sort of half an hour that we've been talking, I have just watched it on YouTube. Because hey, people work fast, okay? People work fast. It's already on the internet. If it's there, it's there. So a friend of mine at work said he saw it and he stayed to the very end. When he told me about Spider-Man 2099, I was like, no. And he's one of my favorites. Spider-Man 2099 is one of my favorite Spider-Men. You know, just purely because of the costume. I just love the way the costume looks. Really do love it. And you guys mentioned Oscar Isaac voicing him. You know, obviously it's Miguel O'Hara as the character. And I'm like, okay, bring it. Bring that on, because it's the same excitement that I had when I watched the very end of the Venom movie, where we see Cletus Cassidy appear.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, holy shit. Yeah. Okay. So bring on as many spin-offs and as many different films that they can, because what Sony have done with this film, they have now set themselves up for something phenomenal. So they should definitely stick with it and branch out from it and work and just make it more, just expand it, just keep going with it. And rating out of 5, obviously 5. So, because like I say, one of the best animated films, superhero animated films that I've watched in a long time. And yeah, really, really good. It's heartfelt, it's emotional, it's funny, it's also got action, the music is fantastic. I think the music for me that stood out was the theme for Prowler. His theme.
Oh my god!
Every time the theme came on, you just knew, okay, yeah, shit is about to go down.
It was so cool. His theme was so cool.
It was like, how did it go again? It was like,
yeah. Exactly, yeah. It was so cool. It was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, no, overall, love the film. Just fantastic.
Yeah, interesting point about the Prowler theme. That's actually a song on the soundtrack. I can't remember the song because I got to review it, but I literally, it's part of one of the songs. I can't remember which one it is, but CK, thank you so much for being here, you guys. I tell this story all the time, but when I was in college and like looking at different reviews, this man was reviewing Smallville. I used to love Smallville. I wish Keaton was here because he's the biggest Smallville nerd as well. But the reason why I started YouTube because I was like, man, this dude is talking about this show that he loves so much and so ambitious and so great, and I was like, I want to start this as well. So I really owe a lot of me being on YouTube to CK. So I appreciate you for coming and continuously coming back. And where can everybody find you, man?
Well, I don't do as many videos as I used to these days, but if you want, my YouTube is the same name as I'm on here, CK61938. You'll also find me on Twitter and Instagram as well. So by all means, follow if you want. My YouTube video has like roughly about 1,000 videos now. It contains Smallville reviews. We've got movie reviews on there. I even reviewed some Arrow stuff as well when Arrow first started, Flash briefly, Gotham, Constantine, and just about pretty much everything to do with comic books. I think the last video that I did was obviously in memory of the great Stan Lee. So by all means, check out the videos. I'm leaning towards doing podcasts soon. It's still a plan at the moment. It's nothing definitive, but I'll let you guys know when that starts coming together.
Okay, yeah, you and Nerd Chronic should talk.
Absolutely, man. Yeah,
like, thank you so much, bro.
It's no problem at all. Good night. Have a good one, guys. See you all soon.
Have a good night, man.
Have a good one, guys.
Hey.
Speaking of Nerd Chronic, what's going on, bro?
Hey, man. Yeah, good hearing all these thoughts.
Yeah, man. I'm very interested in your thoughts about it because we never actually had a conversation about any of your thoughts or thinking on it. So I'm really curious, What did you feel about the translation of Spider-Man, of how you felt about Spider-Man going in and then, coming out of it? And if you can go ahead and expound on the different things about the cast, the story. Nobody's really talked about the story just yet. If you want to expound on that. You did bring up the VFX. I have something to talk about that one. And then speculations of where things are going moving forward.
Right. A lot to unpack. But going into it, as a Spider-Man fan, Spider-Man is not my favorite hero, but I respect him a lot. I respect what he represents as a character and for the medium of comic books in general. My friend, my roommate, my audio engineer for the podcast, he is a #1 Spider-Man fan. He loves him to death, and so we constantly have really great conversations about what he means to him and what value Spider-Man has had as a hero, as a character. So going into it, I vicariously have a lot of expectations for that character because of what it means to him and other people. I thought they nailed the aspects of all six different versions of Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, Penny Parker, Spider-Man Noir. I thought they nailed all of them very well. I think they did it so remarkably well, getting them the screen time that they needed, but also serving Miles' story really well, because I was on the same page. I thought they were going to kind of gloss over his origin from the comics to try to streamline that to just build up a Spider-Verse, multiverse type of story where everyone gets fair share. But he definitely was the focal point of the story, and that comes full circle in the third act. I feel very well. Someone online said the moment when he puts on his suit for the first time, it's such a rare instance in a superhero film, where someone suits up, like their full final suit, and it feels really earned. And this one feels absolutely very earned. Yeah. When he puts on that suit, that black Spider-Man suit, you understand like what weight that has to him as a character and as a person. And I really, really appreciated that. As far as the film goes in general, for like the story, I thought it was like a remarkably bold story, and I'm surprised they pulled it off. Truthfully, I kind of compare it to what people say for the DC films. People always want to, say for the Flash film, if that ever happens, that they want to do a Flashpoint film. And my immediate response is that you can't really do that without, foundation of characters and like kind of what that will mean for the universe and for the multiple characters that need to be involved to make that story happen. But somehow, Lord and Miller and the directors and those involved managed to do that with this film. They managed to surpass my expectations and achieve a story that involves so many characters that we knew nothing about. Yeah. But by the end of that 2-hour time span, made us care about them enough to invest in it and to make it believable. And so that was kind of what I was so shocked by. I was shocked that the ambition of this film actually landed and was executed so remarkably well. Again, as far as the cast goes, I think everyone did a fantastic job. A better job that I even anticipated. Like I had full faith in them, but by halfway through the film, I really felt that they were these characters. I really believed their performances, and I'll point out that Haley Steinfeld is having a killer year, man. She's currently has 2 near perfectly rated films out in theaters right now, and at this point, I think she has 4 films in her back catalog that are above 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. So she's having a really, really great career for herself. But she was great. The one thing I'll say though, as far as like moving forward, because you're asking like what this means for the future, everyone wants spin-offs, and I would be fine with that too. I'm gonna make a bold prediction here, which I've constantly gone back and forth with my roommate. Is that I'm genuinely scared or frightened that this movie won't make money. This movie won't do well in the box office. Not because it doesn't deserve it, but I've seen on multiple message boards online. I've met people in real life. I've met casual people around just networking that this film isn't on the radar. Like they aren't aware of what this film is or what it's kind of trying to accomplish. Compound that with the fact that next week we're going to be slammed with Bumblebee, Aquaman, Mary Poppins. I am worried that this film is going to get completely washed away by those other well-known IPs.
No pun intended.
And so I'm hoping it does well. I'm absolutely hoping 100% that it blows people away and makes all the money in the world. But I'm genuinely frightened that this movie won't make money, whilst Venom does make all the money in the world, and it kind of mixes messages with Sony, and they eventually won't know what's up, what's down at some point. Yeah, so that's my takeaway right now. Is that I love the film so much. I love it to death. I would give it a 5 out of 5. I'd give it a 6 out of 5 because of how remarkable, how groundbreaking it is. But I'm seriously afraid that people won't give it the chance it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's something that we didn't even. I'm gonna have to do that for part 2 because domestically, I think on Friday it made like 12 million. On Thursday it was at like 3.5, which is decent. But honestly, the scope of this film, if they would have platformed it differently, man, I don't know. This could have been the biggest movie this year. And technically, in so many different respects, it actually is. And so, that's actually a really good sentiment that we should talk about a little bit later on, maybe in part 2.
I want to clarify. I do believe it is like possibly one of my favorite films of the year, if only for how innovative it is. I do think this is like I said it's not like the next step in the evolution of the medium. I think it's a completely new sidestep that we didn't even know existed. As far as animation goes, because animation as a medium for films and cinema, I think it's not been stagnant, but it's kind of been like comfortable for a long time. If you look at the frontrunners, which are Pixar and Disney, they're great, but their style has been kind of unified for the last 10, 15 years. It's like the kind of like 3D round orbish kind of look, and they're great at it, and they refined it and perfected it, but it's not really changing in any way. This is something that's absolutely changed the game. It's something that we absolutely haven't seen before. It's completely new and innovative, and it's fresh and it's fun, and it's exactly what we would always crave to have in film. Something new ideas.
Yeah, no, all of that was perfect. And huge shout out to Deadshot DST, because he said he saw the movie in 3D, and he said that the 3D was amazing. He said that this was the perfect film for 3D, so it would be really interesting to see how that actually looks. I might have to look at it in 3D, and then before I do my part 2, like see how that kind of translated moving forward. But I definitely do think that this movie was innovation moved to the side. Unlike anything we kind of ever thought that we could even go. And I think from an aesthetic, as far as the story design, the fact that they created a whole multiverse really in just one movie. Just one movie was able to achieve what Marvel did excellently, within, I guess, the 22 films they've had. And technically the first 5 films, they did a really good job with the culmination of that for Avengers. But in one movie, they were able to do so much that now I want to see all these films. And I would have loved that, if Justice League would have gone to these kind of lengths with how they created theirs. But unfortunately, that wasn't what we got. But this was able to do something that, on a visual design and story perspective, that I never thought they could ever do. And it exceeded my expectations. For me, it was definitely a 5 out of 5. I could give it, if any higher level, I would. But let's go to Anthony. Anthony, where are you? There you are. So, buddy, what did this movie translate to you? And then also, what did Spider-Man mean to you? But you can go and break down what you thought about the story, the cast, and anything else in between, like speculations of where they're going to go. And then we'll round things out pretty soon.
Okay. So Spider-Man means a lot to me. Again, I know I mentioned it earlier, but Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi, the first one with Tobey Maguire, was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. I still have memories being, 5, 6 years old, like remembering those scenes, and like and I'm studying film right now, so that movie is kind of like, if it weren't for Stan Lee in that movie, I wouldn't be studying film, or if it'd be influenced to even study that craft at all. So Spider-Man is a big personal place in my heart. But personally, I didn't know a lot about Miles Morales. I heard about him, when there were speculations about casting for the reboot after the Amazing Spider-Man series. I was like, let's do Miles Morales. It'll be cool. They didn't go that direction, obviously, which is fine. I love Tom Holland's Spider-Man so much with all my heart, and he's my favorite incarnation of Spider-Man. And in regard to this movie, it made me finally be able to relate to Miles Morales, the character, because I always thought he was cool. I'm from Latino descent as well, and I could relate to, and I was born in New York, New York City, not Brooklyn, like he is from, but the city. And I think that the movie executed it so well. The cast is fantastic, and it's so cool because I know, for me, I was in New York Comic Con. I saw, the cast, with Paperboy was there, and Shamik Moore, and Jake Johnson. By the way, I don't think he's got enough credit in this movie as the older Spider-Man, which I think he was fantastic in the movie. And at first I didn't think I was gonna like him that much from the trailers, but he was really good. And I found myself like relating to him a lot. more as the movie progressed, and I understood his like kind of viewpoint, of what he kind of like his end goal was. I thought Prowler was fantastic. I think it makes me sad because of Donald Glover's, incarnation. I'm like, yeah, I don't think Glover's gonna look as badass as Prowler does in this movie.
Right.
But let's see how it does. Let's see how it goes. But I love the Prowler. I love the relationship with him and his mom. I love the relationship between the chemistry actually with everybody. Haley Steinfeld was great. Yeah, man, I think that spinoff wise, what they might intentionally do, I would love to, because I watched Spider-Man the anime series when I was a little bit younger, and I remember that arc where it was like all the clones. And I was hoping to see I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been so cool to see him somehow in this movie. I would like to see him introduced in another movie because he's a clone of Peter Parker. That would be cool to see as well. That's definitely possible. I would watch an entire movie of just Spider-Man Noir. I know I mentioned him earlier. He's like the highlight for me.
Yeah.
Like Nicolas Cage is so good in superhero movies, bro. Like Kick-Ass, and then Teen Titans, and like now in this, he's really good in it. This is funny. Like when I didn't recognize him, I was like, wait, who is this actor that's playing this? And if you follow me on Twitter, I said that this is Rorschach, because I'm a huge Watchmen fan. So I was like, this is Rorschach Spider-Man for me. You know what I mean? So it was cool to see that kind of like cool like detective pulp novel type of Spider-Man. That was a big highlight for me. But that would be cool to see a spin-off Spider-Gwen. I think it would be great. In terms of sequels, I think I don't think they'll have the Kingpin back if they do a sequel. I think they'll probably expand to someone, not more of a bigger threat. I think it'll kind of go still in the continuity of multiple universes and the possibilities of, what I hope would happen. And I know that this is weird, and I saw Grace Randolph's review of the movie, and she was talking about how they kind of make the actors look a lot like the characters they're playing. So I would like to see if this movie was canon to the other universe of Spider-Man, like in the MCU. I would like to see Shamik play Miles Morales if he could. That would be amazing. His Sanfa as Spider-Gwen. I'd be down for that. Because it's all. I'm a huge fan of parallel universes, alternate realities, and they could do that exactly. Especially since they did it in this movie. So that'd be cool. I'm sure. Sorry, Sam. I know there was another thing that you wanted to ask me. Also, I forgot if I missed any points. I know I ran a little bit.
Anthony, you did perfect. What was your number review? 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5.
If I had to rate the movie, I'd give it probably a 4.5. The only thing some nitpicky things is just, the explanation of how Spider-Gwen got into the world. I was really confused about that. I'm not sure if you guys can explain this to me. How, everyone came into the thing at the same time, but she came from the past, and then it was like a weird loop. I'm not sure how that made sense. At least for me, I know you guys probably know more about that than I do. I was just a little bit confused how that made sense, because the movie's so fast-paced. I was like, wait. But she was already established in the world already. But the thing happened afterwards, and it was a bit confusing for me. I thought afterwards, after the death of his uncle, I thought it was kind of fast paced. All right, let's move on to the next scene. Sorry, my dad's calling me, so you could talk while I'm answering this call. So please continue. I don't want to disturb. My dad, it's been an emergency, so sorry.
No, I know Anthony will probably listen to this a little bit later on, but part of the reason why I think Spider-Gwen actually showed up a little bit further is initially Peter's head got dunked in quickly, and then he kind of popped it out for a second, and then it dunked completely in. I think from a displacement in time and reality, when you start talking about a multiverse, there's no telling when, at what point people are going to come in. It's like 3 of them came in at the same exact time. The older Peter Parker came in at his own specific time and got bounced off against somewhere else. And then she came a little bit, a few days before. And so it was just kind of a displacement based on time and space. One of the most interesting, significant things to me was the multiverse factor of it, is that they all aesthetically look different. They all look like how their comic book renditions are supposed to.
Yeah.
But the other thing about that is, because this is the Ultimate Universe, that is how this Kingpin looks. That doesn't mean that, the Kingpin for Noir looks the same. It doesn't mean that, if we do get Ben Reilly, if we do get a different Peter Parker, if we don't get somebody else, then their villains are going to look significantly different. That's the reason why I think that there's so much groundwork that they can do with these spinoffs, because all the villains are going to be completely redone and potentially recast. And design-wise, aesthetically, they're going to look different no matter what. And so I think that that's one of the things that is very fascinating when you talk about, like, time and manipulation of multiverse. And I think that's one of the things where I couldn't, be critical on it, just because I don't know what is going to happen. I don't know what these characters are like. I don't know who the voice actors are going to be, but it opens up so many realm of possibilities, because we don't know anything about Spider-Gwen's villains. You know what I'm saying? Like, we saw that Peter Parker was the Lizard for her, but we didn't see, like, what is her, Goblin looks like. What is all these other kind of villains connected to her. It's just brief semblances just to give you enough taste to be like, okay, I want to see more from all of them. So last but not least, to close this out, Evan, let's go back to these interesting questions that we had. So the last question was, what does Spider-Man to you, and then what did it translate? You already did that, but talk about the cast. Talk about what you thought about the design, the story, the VFX, and the music, and then kind of like your impressions of where this is going to go.
Well, like what you said earlier, I totally think when they're going to do spin-offs, like what they're planning already, the sequel, I think what I heard is that Miles and Gwen, they're going to focus on that relationship more, and then they're going to have more Spider-Women come in, and Gwen's going to kind of, I think, lead them and go on some other type of adventure with other Spider-Women and, I guess, men to go up against a bigger threat. But now that we have the Spider-Verse established, like, people now know what the multiverse of different spider dimensions are. Now you can kind of go crazy, like, I don't know, Spider-Man India, Anansi the Spider God, Steampunk Spider-Man, or, Spider-Punk. They can do all these different incarnations of them. And now 2099, what we saw, hopefully they can actually give them a full role in the next movie. I would love to see that. Animation, like you guys said, completely outdoes everything that has been done in the past. And it's crazy that this is the same studio that made the Emoji Movie. And now they made this, which is insane that they are having that same level of talent, and they just go out of this world with Spider-Verse. And I think this is truly a love letter to Spider-Man and his fans, period. Because the way on how they portray the character, the way that they stylize the costumes for all like individual Spider people, the way that they each give each Spider person their own unique art style. Noir is more dark and gritty and 1930s-esque. Penny Parker has this anime vibe going on. Spider-Ham's totally Looney Tunes-esque, and they even say that, like, well, you have a problem with cartoons? I love that. And mainly, I guess design-wise, though, for the villains, Prowler looked amazing. He looked awesome. But sadly, I wasn't really digging Scorpion's design or Green Goblin. I know that they were mixing it with Ultimate, and then the classic where he had the big purple cat thing going on. And Kingpin 2, he was a bit too huge. Like, almost like, I know, like a comic book movie, but like almost too comic book, like huge-esque how they made him. But I did like what they did with Doc Ock. I think that was a very cool choice, and I was not expecting that. And it's really cool, all this attention that Doc Ock's getting from Spider-Man PS4 now with Into the Spider-Verse, making his headway too, and Kingpin from Daredevil, and even Spider-Man PS4 again, and now Into the Spider-Verse again. So it's awesome that these characters are getting the attention they deserve. And I just think that overall, with incorporating this story with Miles as the main character, with these other Spider people, was wonderfully made with Miles, Peter, and Gwen, who are pretty much the main protagonists of the movie. I sadly think, though, that Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, and Spider-Man were there just kind of for filler, because they glossed over their kind of origins, even though it was like super humorous at that point. But then they only had like a few scenes. They had that fight in Aunt May's house, and then the final battle, they just kind of had a quick little fight with Scorpion, Kingpin and Tombstone, and then they just kind of went back to their own dimensions. I like that they were in the movie, but like you guys said, there was a lot going on. They had to kind of wrap it up. There was all these stories going on at once. So if they had to cut plots short, I understand why it was like those kind of not too important ones. I would have liked to seen way more though of all of them, Nick Cage and Penny Parker and Spider-Ham. But overall, with what the movie did in a really cool way, I think, is broaden people's horizons to who Spider-Man is and what he is for others. Like what it means to be Spider-Man, who you can be as a hero on your own terms, and really embody what it means to have great power and have the great responsibility to make sure that you can protect others and the ones that you care about while being a hero at the same time. And I think it did a great job. I think it just focused on all aspects of Spider-Man. It completely widened my horizons to different Spider-Man comics, the Spidey lore, all these other different iterations of Spider-Man, even what they did from the games like Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions and the 90s Spider-Man cartoon with the Silver Spider-Armor Spider-Man and like the Doc Ock Spider-Man, like all that back in that show was amazing. But in this movie, this could be what I think is cool, someone's first time being exposed to Miles Morales. And that could be even more so their first time being exposed to Spider-Man. Is seeing Miles as Spider-Man, not Peter. So I think that's even cooler to think about. And what they did is make everyone feel like a superhero is a wonderful message to convey to people. And I think this movie just did a wonderful job of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was your number rating for this one?
I would give it. It's hard because I really like this movie. Is it the best Spider-Man movie for me? Personally, no, just because what I said, I'm not too big of a fan of the villain designs, and some of the plots with the other Spider people felt a bit rushed, but I understand why they did that. But animation is superb. The overall message of the story was great, so I would give it a 4 out of 5. I still would highly recommend it to everyone who's a fan of Spider-Man. Definitely one of the best animated movies I've seen. Spider-Man movie, it's definitely up there with top 5. Probably like my third one, because number 1 is the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. I actually prefer that one more than Spider-Man 2, just mainly because of nostalgia, but also because I think the storytelling that was so good. Then Spider-Man 2, then this, Into the Spider-Verse, and then Homecoming and The Amazing Spider-Man 1. But I think that overall what it did with Miles, Peter, Gwen, and really humanizing Spider-Man even more, even with this crazy plotline going on of different dimensions and multiple Spider people and a talking Spider-Ham pig, all these crazy plots. It still was a really human story at the heart of it, and I think that's really, really great that they, focused on that to be the main focal point of this movie. And everyone in the theater was cheering like crazy when 2099 came on screen and when Spider-Ham and Noir came on screen. They all seemed to know who these characters were, or at least were excited to see more versions of Spider-Man. And I think that's really cool that if in the future we do get more movies of this and more Spider people come on screen and more people are exposed to the Spider-Verse world of characters, then that's going to be even awesome for more comic book fans out there, which is amazing.
Yeah. No, thank you, Evan. I appreciate it, bro.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, so we got to round this out. There's still a lot of things to kind of unpack because, honestly, I was going to ask trigger questions like, did you guys catch like Spider-Man 3 Easter egg? Did you guys catch like Spider-Man 2 Easter egg? Was like the older Peter Parker like technically Tobey Maguire's character? What parts of the movie made you guys legit have an emotional reaction? Because there are some moments that for me, I was curious, like some of you guys, did you guys get teary-eyed about anything? But I mean, in all fairness, like this to me is tied for my favorite Spider-Man film, which is Spider-Man 2. I even have every different version of it. I even have the 2.1. But I do love Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 1 is such a great movie. But this film did something that I don't know. I feel like, and you guys can answer this real quick. Do you think this has a lot of rewatchability to it? Because I mean, yeah, this weekend for sure. Like some people are not going to see it, but I feel like this movie has so much that you can go back and rewatch it and rewatch and just like fall deeper and deeper in love with it. I don't know what you guys thought.
For me personally, yes, absolutely. I think that is like highly dependent upon your investment in the character and the Marvel world. You know, I think again, like I really hope this reaches out to casual fans as well as hardcore fans, and I think they may have less of an inclination to come back and revisit it after you see it once, because there's so much that will fly over their heads. But when we watch it, you know, we understand Spider-Man pretty well. Even the stuff that we don't catch, we know that we're not catching it, and so we want to go back and see those things that we didn't understand or catch exactly perfectly the first time. So I think for me, yeah, and probably for all of us, I think it has a lot of rewatchability. If not for the jokes and the Easter eggs and just that Times Square shot of all the stuff that's going on for the Ultimate World.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
For me, I definitely think so, and I think it's one of the first movies that immediately after watching it, like, okay, I want to see it again right now, because there was a lot to process first time seeing it, and mainly just because every single shot in this movie looks like it's literally taken right out of a comic, and you could literally frame it as a piece of art.
Yeah.
Like famous comic book panels. It looks so good. Every shot is so well made, and I think that they did such a great job of trying to incorporate that comic book art style into a moving animated film. And you can see how they took inspiration from, you know, like the classic Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Stan Lee comics, and all the newer art styles from like the Spider-Man comics and noir and all that, and all this love and passion of just comics in general put into this movie is such a wonderful love letter for all Marvel fans and comic book fans out there. And for me, yeah, like you guys said, I want to see all the Easter eggs, mainly our boy from Spider-Man PS4 getting his limelight of the suit in that shot in the cave, and in the end credit scene too was so awesome. I want to see that again. And I just love everything that this movie did. And just showing Spider-Man a new way that I never really was expecting, because I like Miles. After playing the game, I love Miles, but I was always kind of like, for this movie, like, well, there's going to be a lot of Spider people. Are they going to be able to give Miles a lot of, you know, screen time, and his, you know, main role is his own unique individual, and, you know, really make him more unique from Peter and Gwen and the others? And they totally did, and they totally exceeded my expectations. And just for that reason alone, and mainly his relationship between Aaron Davis, his uncle, and Miles was one of the biggest highlights of the movie, and I would just see it again just for that alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess we gotta close out, you guys, because I mean, again, I could keep going. Like, I was like, man, Superior Spider-Man could have his own movie. Like, Ben Riley could have his own movie. Like, it's so many different things that they could do with this, man. And that's not even going into the territory if you start bringing into the symbiote and like merging what they're doing with the universe for Venom and merging that into this. It's just so much. So we might end up having to do a part 2 discussion. If you guys want to join, you're more than welcome to come back for it.
Absolutely.
I'm down.
Yeah, so if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and plugging in where people can find you, where your content is. I'll let you go first, Evan.
Well, I am M. Filarca. You can find me on M. Filarca, at M. Filarca on Twitter, M. Filarca on YouTube. I talk about Spider-Man PS4 news. I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Avengers game coming out, being made by Square Enix Crystal Dynamics, and just all Marvel games related stuff, and more Spider-Man PS4 goodness, and just Spidey stuff related. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter, and the Spidey Squad.
Spidey Squad, yeah. And then Nerd Chronic, where can people find you, man?
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter, both at Nerd Chronic. You can find us on YouTube. That's where we upload episodes. So you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, all your favorite podcasting platforms. That's where we put our podcast. We will be doing a review of this film tomorrow, which will go up on Monday. And that'll be our full spoiler review for the whole thing. And I would say just keep an eye out, because that's going to be a big one for us. I think we've been looking forward to this film, I think, ever since the first word of it came out.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you both for coming out. You guys are pioneers of what you're doing as far as podcasting, as far as YouTubing, and just as a culture. Like, I appreciate both of you guys for being here. We're going to close out. I will let you guys know when and what time we might do a part 2, because so many different people wanted to be a part of this.
Awesome.
Prince, Boba Talks, Akasan, all 3 of those guys definitely wanted to join in. Among other people that I'm gonna say those as surprises later on. So we'll do a spoiler discussion, mega part 2 later on. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this discussion. Thanks everybody for in the chat. Sorry we weren't able to kind of see a lot of your chat messages, but the next one, I promise, we'll try to go and answer some of those questions the next time and kind of facilitate it a little bit better. But yeah, we're gonna go. Definitely check out all these guys in the description bar below. I will put all their information in a little bit later on tonight. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. Y'all have a blessed night. Talk to you guys later. Peace, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a good one.
And broadcast.